Hello, David Tritsky for the Bond Experience. Welcome back. My favorite stories to hear around James Bond are ones that are directly from the set, from the people that have worked on the films. And I have a gentleman that I know you're going to recognize the name and more than likely the face. You see, he's worked on Mission Impossible, Titanic, Indiana Jones, Marvel, heck, even the Terminator. Oh, and by the way, he's worked on some film called James Bond, but he is none other than Gary Powell, and I'd like to invite him into the show. Gary, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for having me on board.
No, it's such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. I've been following you for a while. I mean, I think it goes back to stuntman, to stunt coordinator, and all the way to second unit director, and here you are. So what a treat.
Thank you very much. Yeah, nice. I've had a very good and lucky career. Thank you.
You really have. And it's been a transformational career. And this is some of the things that I've wanted to talk to you about today. And if you don't mind, because it is a Bond channel, we're going to gravitate heavily to James Bond. You don't mind?
All day long. Love it.
Okay. Well, first of all, talk to us a little bit about, and correct me if I'm wrong, was GoldenEye your first foray into the world of Bond?
Very much. It was my first job as a Bond stuntman, but when I was 14, my first Bond experience was on the set of The Spy Who Loved Me. My dad, brother, and uncle were all stunt performers on it, and I was bunking off school. That I did a lot back then, and I was allowed to go to the studios and on the set, which was the submarine set. And back then, the studios were way more sort of, say, friendlier. Open, so I could sort of walk around, but technically my job, because Bob Simmons was the stunt coordinator on it, and I could go there and I could go and get the teas for the stunt guys, or I could go out, like there was 3 caravans outside where all the stuntmen hang out, and one of them was where they all played cards. One of them was where they all slept, and another one they used to play films that I wasn't allowed to see. So they sort of go like, go and get so and so, and I knew that person would be in the one where they were sleeping, so I could knock on the door. And, go on set, but I was never allowed in the room where they was playing the films. But then my sort of pay for doing that was at the end of the night when I used to collect some of the machine guns. I used to take them back to the armory, and they used to let me fire all the blank bullets off at the end. I mean, if you did that now, you'd probably get a swarm of police on and you'd get shot, sort of thing, But he's a 14-year-old kid running around the studios firing machine guns. I was absolutely in dreamland, so it's fantastic.
Those were such a different time, a different age. But I mean, I want to think about your age too, because Bond still was a magical character for you, but because your father and brother eventually were into the world of stunts, was some of the Mickey taken out of it a little bit? Did you see behind the scenes a little too much?
No, it didn't spoil it for me then. It spoiled it for me when I become a proper stunt person, because I didn't really pay attention to the filming side of it. It was just like, there was this massive set, 3 massive submarines on it, the control room and this, and outside, I could walk around the studios and there was like Space 1999 being made and stuff like that. It was something that sort of got me into this world that I love, because sort of every room was a different piece of the world. It was so sort of vast. It was just like, I just love being at a film studio, because just what you see everything was make believe and fantasy. So it was brilliant.
It's amazing. What a great upbringing. And so you were, I'll use the word ruined from a DNA standpoint of James Bond. I mean, it was part of your blood, the vocation. GoldenEye, I know that, and again, this is my foray into you. I remember the whole description of the tank scene, for example, and you get pulled into there. But even going before that, somebody has to call you and break the news to you that you're working on a Bond film. What is that like?
I mean, so obviously it was Simon Crane was the stunt coordinator on GoldenEye, and and I've known Simon for a long time, and I know him sort of personally and all that. And I think we sort of done Braveheart together. So I've done Braveheart, and was it Braveheart? I can't remember. And then I come back to do First Night, and then he rang me up and he's like, we're going to do a Bond film. So I was like, oh my God, this is the dream. Like it, you know, and it's definitely every British person's dream to do a Bond film. And, you know, and as you get older and, you know, you spread the world and everyone's like, especially when I started, say, coordinating them, everyone was like, look, all I want to do is a day on a Bond film, you know what I mean? Because it was that sort of prestige, you know. So he run me out. He's like, oh, you know, you're going to drive a tank. I was like, okay, he'd never drove a tank before. So, so yeah, that was my sort of phone call for that. And it was, you know, and it's the dream. It is the dream job.
It's got to be. And I'm trying to peel away the layers because, you know, as a layman, as somebody that watches the little 3-minute excerpts that you see on YouTube or the making of, it seems almost like a family oriented set. And I'm not being snarky here, but I'd love to know, is that PR talk or is it really family oriented?
It's definitely not. I think Cubby was the introduction of that. Now, I never sort of personally met Cubby, even though I was around him, because again, I was on obviously I was on Spo Love Me set, but I also went out to Corfu when they were shooting the one with the Lotus.
Your Eyes Only?
Well, for Your Eyes Only. Oh shit, what was it? Anyway, I was out in Corfu and I met him out there, and he very much was a family person, and obviously he was a businessman, you know, but he looked after the crew, and the Bond people, family, look after the crew sort of better than anyone I've ever worked with. And it's not being a downgrade to anyone else, but they just do, you know. And obviously when I started working, it was Michael and Barbara that was sort of running the franchise. Then they actually took over on GoldenEye, and you know, even when we was my reign from, say, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace and that, you know, they looked after, and you know, it really was a much more you know, if there was a problem with someone, Barbara would be the first person there to sort of go, look, is there a problem? What can I do? If it, you know, if it was a personal thing or something like that. So for that, it was amazing, absolutely amazing.
It's interesting you talked about Cubby as a family person, but business-like. When I've talked to Barbara a handful of times and was able to also interview her, and she came across as so emotional, warm, and authentic. But I also know that she's a juggernaut in the world of entertainment. So it's like, how do I deal with this? You know?
No, she is, you know, and the world is different now to back then. It is much more corporate now, as we all know. You know, and everyone's got to do their job, and you know, there's a budget there, and everyone's counting the dollars and dimes a lot more. But again, she is, you know, we was, for example, we was in on Quantum of Solace. We was in Panama. We was doing all the boat sequence in. Really sorry, don't shit my names, but where we was doing the boat sequence, the area wasn't the sort of safest area, so they organised for the hotel to sort of, you know, normally you'd go out at night, you go to restaurants. They done it in the hotel. There was barbecues every night. There was this, and sort of every single night, Michael and Barbara would go around like people's tables and sit down at different tables. They wasn't just sitting, say, with the actors or the producer. You know, they'd go and sit with the hair and makeup. They'd go and sit with the construction. They'd go and sit with the stunts. They'd go and do. Michael would walk around, give cigars out, and all that sort of things. He wanted, you know, they wanted everyone first of all to be safe, but to be enjoying themselves as well. You know, and it's a treat that's you know, it's a shame that everyone does it, sort of thing. But you know, I can't really say enough good things about the pair of them. The way they used to run the show, they are truly amazing.
That's amazing. It sounded almost like a wedding where you have to go around to the tables.
It was that sort of scenario, you know, like Daniel had a birthday out there, massive birthday party, and it was just always smiles and a good time, you know.
Yeah. Now, Brosnan, it's interesting. You have the wonderful historical knowledge of kicking off 2 actors in the world of James Bond. You have Brosnan, obviously, and you have Craig, who we'll talk about. But with Brosnan, what was he like on the set of GoldenEye?
He was freaking amazing. I love Pierce. And I actually said to him, because I remember, you know, he's 10 years older than me, and he was like, I think, what was he, early 40s, I think.
Yeah.
And we used to come into the studios at like silly o'clock, like 6 o'clock in the morning, and he'd walk in and he was just like, I was like, how can you be this good looking at 6 o'clock in the morning? You know, but he was super nice, you know, very respectful of what we did, and with every department, you know. And you know, again with Pierce, I've got nothing but good things to say about him. He was amazing.
Did you find that I always find it watching actors as an audience member evolve over time, and I always say that Pierce was amazing to me in Goldeneye, but where he really hit his stride of like, oh, I see this man was
Mm.
Tomorrow Never Dies. And did you find that even just watching him on set and as an actor, he grew into the role even more so?
He definitely did the same as Daniel did. It is obviously probably the ultimate male role that everyone wants, I should think. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, you're taking on a big chance. Like if you get it wrong, it's sort of acting suicide sort of thing, And lucky enough for all of us, and for Pierce and Daniel, we had Martin Campbell at the helm. You know what I mean? And obviously he kickstarted the pair of them. So there's a lot of credit has to be thrown to Martin. But again, like you come in, even me, when I did Goldeneye as a performer, and all of a sudden, like, this is James Bond stunts. This isn't run of the mill. This is James Bond, where everything has to be just brilliant. Yeah. And then it was the same sort of pressure when I got the job for Casino Royale. It's like everything I did before then was realistically under the radar. Now I'm slapped front page. Do you know what I mean? So I can't get it wrong. And there's a lot of pressure that goes with it, for everyone, and especially for the actors. There's a hell of a lot of pressure there. And for them both to sort of handle it the way they did was truly amazing.
I think it was, it's probably The World Is Not Enough, but definitely Casino Royale, where your name and face became a household name to the movie industry, but also to Bond fans. So to your point, it was you as a billboard out there. They were going to sort of judge you on what they see. But, do you, when you see that responsibility move from stunt performer to coordinator, and that you're coordinating all those events, do you feel the stress and pressure, or do you just feel pure elation?
It was definitely pressure, but I'd always thrive under pressure. Like, even when I was doing the stunts, like, the tank driving or the crane on Terminator or whatever, it's like, the sort of bigger the stunt, the more pressure, the more I liked it. It was just a nice sort of, drugs per se. Yeah. Obviously with Casino, it was good for all of us really, because obviously Daniel was getting all the bad press, Blonde Bond and all that sort of crap that the press were throwing out there. There was a lot of I'd got the job, and I was lucky because in all truth be told, they wanted Simon to do the job, but Simon Crane couldn't do it. Lucky for me. And I'd obviously just worked with Martin. I've obviously worked with Martin on Goldeneye, and I'd literally just done Zorro with him. So lucky enough, I sort of got the job. So there was a little bit of jealousy out there from a few other people, as you would do, because it is the ultimate freaking job. You know what I mean? And I can even remember I had to go into the office to meet Martin, Michael, and Barbara, and we sat down. We had a conversation. It was actually about the free running, and we had a sort of quick conversation. Then Michael and Barbara left, and Martin had a conversation. And then they was like, okay, yeah, great. You can, okay, see you later. I was like, okay. So I left. So I called Callum McDougall, and I was like, Callum, I've had the meeting, but I don't know if I've got the job. He went, no, you've got the job. And I was like, and I don't think I slept for 5 days. Like it was like, I was just looking up at the ceiling at night. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. This is like, it's not even a dream come true. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it was the ultimate. I can't even describe it. So that buzz, I mean, the adrenaline I got from that was just amazing. It was silly things. I used to drive to work just listening to Bond music, because it was just doing the music to give me the ideas and go through. Even in the office, I'd be sitting there listening to things, and this has got to be the best. So
you have no idea how happy that makes me, because I've spoken to a lot of people in the industry, and maybe as they should, they say, well, it's just a job. I put my emotion aside. It's like you going to your job every day, David. But to hear that you truly appreciated, picking up the mantle of James Bond and how important of an institution it is. I mean, it's one of the most recognizable characters, but certainly from a cultural standpoint, I mean, it's part of the zeitgeist that you were creating. And it conjured up a question for me, because although I don't like comparing actors to each other typically, I can imagine being the stunt coordinator, you had to think differently about Pierce Brosnan and now Daniel Craig as very different individuals. What was that like as far as the?
Well, again, we had a good leader in Martin, and he come in with specific sort of ideas. Obviously, the evolution of, like, Connery, Roger Moore, Dalton, and all that. Lazenby, even, the world is different, and I've always said, like, I think each character, even Dalton and Lazenby, I think they actually did really good freaking jobs. They was at different times. Like Roger Moore's couldn't have played Daniel Craig's era no more than probably Daniel Craig couldn't have done Roger Moore's era. The world wasn't in that, So he was like, Bond. It's going to be a lot more gritty. Obviously, we have to sort of, in a way, give credit to the Bourne franchise. They sort of twisted things upside down a little bit with the first Bourne Identity. So, then we sort of jumped on board with that and took it a little bit more. So it's going to be serious. Bond had to bleed. He couldn't have a massive fight, and his hair was perfect and all that. So we had good instructions, from Martin, and then obviously when Daniel was announced and he come in, and obviously we would be rehearsing with him, and he'd like, I'd love to do this like that, and I'd like to do that like that, and I think it was a great sort of effort from all of us, because obviously, again, as I said earlier, there was a lot of bad publicity, and it really, you sort of want to turn around to the people and sort of go like, F off sort of thing, but we all just put our head down, all worked as hard as we could, and then obviously, the film come out, and it was just the greatest sort of F you to all of them sort of thing, and obviously from there, Daniel just climbed and climbed and climbed, and the character, as he grew with the character, the character actually got, better and better and better.
Yeah, and it still remains, I think, in a pretty recent poll as of end of last year, truly the majority of people's number one James Bond film, even beyond like the old greats like Goldfinger and From Russia with Love, because it has everything. It has the great stunts and the tropes, but it also is an amazing story. I do want to. So this is for me. I don't know. This is not for my audience. This is purely for me. But I purposely, hold on. Let me pull out for a second. I purposely put myself between Skyfall and Quantum. These are amongst my two favorite Daniel Craig films.
Well, I've got that.
Oh, look at you! Now is that your playroom there? What is that?
Yeah, this is my playroom.
Oh my gosh, Gary! All right, you just trumped me. Look at that.
No, I have seen your playroom, and I've been very jealous of that. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. That is so.
Well, I've got to ask a question, because I have a lot of heart for Quantum of Solace, and some people, they kind of get on it for some of the editing, but everybody loves the stunts. Talk to me when you were filming that, but also even as you saw it as an audience member. What was your take on it? Did you have a problem with the editing? I know it's all these years behind, but
the only thing is obviously it was a good, I actually liked the stunts we did in it, the opening car chase and all that sort of thing, the boat chase. They was very influenced by the Bourne franchise, and they sort of tried to make a Bourne Bond. And I think that shows, Casino Royale in a way was a standalone film. That was like, that's James Bond and that. And obviously after that, they sort of went back when Sam come on board. They sort of went back that way again. So it wasn't, it wasn't say a bad film. It sort of doesn't rank as one of my favorites purely for the fact that it's like, no, Bond's Bond, Bourne's Bourne, and they should never be overlapped. Yeah. So that was that's my opinion of that. They was trying to replicate a Bourne, and they shouldn't have.
What's your opinion of Skyfall?
Skyfall, I think, worked amazing because everything that was going on around it. The Olympics was here, so everything sort of slotted into place with it. Again, we did some great stuff on it. Sam was good to work with. Again, we go some nice kind of like Turkey and all that, where we done all the train sequence. The only thing I was saying, and this is not a sort of criticism of the film, but there was a hell of a lot of work that went into that train sequence from both units, first unit and second unit, and everyone involved, you know, the locations and all that. Hell of a lot of work. And even though it was a fantastic sequence, it didn't, you know, we didn't see the work that went into it. You know, every morning, you know, it's a long drive there. We was in the middle of nowhere, hanging on the side of it. It was hard work, and you know, obviously it paid off, but you just didn't see it on film.
I think despite Quantum being a little bit divisive in the Bond community, everybody loves Skyfall. I mean, in many ways, Skyfall was probably one of the highlights of the Daniel Craig era because it had so many of those things, and also it brought back something of that triumphant fun. You know, sort of the fun factor. It had all the emotion, but everything plus.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice also because it was the first Bond film that broke the $1 billion mark, which is obviously, again, you know, it's nice to be a part of that sort of success. But it's, you know, I've always been proud of the Bond films because, you know, my whole family's obviously been heavily involved in them since sort of day one. You know, my dad and my uncle did a lot of the Connery ones. Then they sort of transferred onto the Roger Moore ones, and with my brother, then my brother did the Dalton ones, and then I obviously took over on like GoldenEye for that. So we've always been around them. So, you know, every time the Bond films have a success, I would, you know, nothing to do with me. I'm just glad for the franchise. You know, it's because they've always been good to us.
Well, it has a lot to do with you. You're being very humble, but you know, it. I'll tell you one thing that sort of starts to roll in my mind is that challenges for you, and we don't typically, as the audience members, happily see the challenges that you face. But even working with Daniel Craig, I mean, he talks about, for example, how he would injure himself. He would maybe push it too far, or something would happen, despite all the safety and coordination that goes on. As a stunt coordinator and even as a second unit director, what are some of those challenges you have with either Daniel or other stars where you're like, hey, slow it down, or how far do you take it? I mean, that's got to be a challenge in and of itself.
I mean, you know, I'll give credit to Daniel, especially on the train sequencing Skyfall, and also the opening sequence in Casino, because he was scared of heights, and you know, it's not something to laugh at. You know, obviously our opening sequence, we was 120 foot up on the crane and all that sort of thing, and he was also up very high on the crane and going across the girders. And it's not, if you are generally frightened of something, you know, it's hard to do it. And not only is he doing it, he's acting at the same time. You know, obviously, you know, we had safety there and all that. But he's like, no, you know, and I was like, no, Daniel, like, I can have a double do this. It's not a problem. He went, no. The audiences are paying their money to see me do it. I want to do it. So it was like, you know, couldn't, all credit to him. Do you know what I mean? He put himself up there, and he worked really hard, you know, and he took the beatings, as he always said, you know. But if you're taking on that role, it's not a role that you can take lightly. You know, you've got to commit to it. So, you know, I can only give him, and even Pierce was the same. You know, he you know, the ones that I work with always put, and I think all of them have. You know, they've always put a lot of effort into the role, and especially as we're getting, say, to the more recent ones, you know, the audiences know a lot more about filming now than what they did, say, back in the Roger Moore days and the Sean Connery days. You know, every film comes with a behind the scenes featurette now, so you see what's going on, and there's videos and whatever. So we've always got to try and be one step in front, and you know, especially, not that my level changes for any film, it's my commitment to sort of trying to produce excellence is the same all the time. But on a Bond, it's a challenge, because I want to do the best I can for the franchise. So everything I'm allowed to do, I'll try and do it as best as I can. And you know, obviously I work with Martin Campbell a lot, and I must say, you know, out of all the directors I work with on the franchise, he is still by far my favourite, because he does let me have a lot more free reign to come up with stuff.
He's fantastic. Yeah, we appreciate him. It's funny how you say excellence, you strive for excellence. I also feel like you've delivered that other films don't typically deliver, and that is elegance in the stunts. I mean, I love Mission Impossible. I'm an appreciator of all those type of films, and obviously to watch Tom Cruise and his team is like bonkers to an audience member, but there's a certain elegance that goes on with the Bond films with stunts. And I think that's what gets the audience so excited, but also separates them a little bit. Does that make sense?
It sort of does, and I think it's a package. I'd love to say it's all me, but it's not. I think it's a combination of everything. The actual character himself, the locations and the sets and all that sort of. I think it's a combination of everything, and that's what Bond is. And if we're doing that, then we're doing a good job. If we're not, say, giving the audience that view, then we've not done a good job. So I think it's a complete package. But the same as like the Mission Impossibles and Tom Cruise. I've worked with Tom 3 times, and I actually did the first mission with him, and I absolutely love the guy because he does throw himself into it. And it's 38 years or something like, or whatever, since the first one, whatever it is, 35 years, whatever. And he does throw himself in there, and he wants to. It's like, I am going to hang out the side of a helicopter. I am going to hang out the world's tallest building. I'm going to, and you can't knock him for it. And when you watch it on film, it shows. It truly does show that he's there doing it.
The elegance that I keep referring to in what you do also has a lot to do with your team members. And I've interviewed more than a few times Chris Corbould.
Yep.
And so, I mean, Chris Corbould, I know, has to, I'm sure, work hand in hand with you. What are those type of partnerships like?
Well, obviously, they're sort of probably two of the most crucial partnerships. There's a lot of, there's construction, hair and makeup and all that, which we all have to integrate with. But obviously, realistically, the two departments that say putting their lives on the line is the special effects and stunts. If either one of them goes wrong, it's not good. They're doing massive explosions, and it's a combination that has to work really well, and obviously, the communication and all that is it's forefront that everyone knows what we're doing. But it is, again, Chris is very passionate about what he does and wants to sort of, push the boundaries for what Bond is and all that. But obviously it's done, as obviously safe as possible and all that sort of thing. But, it is a passion. I think it comes down to passion. If you've not got that, you're just never going to put that final touch to whatever it is that's going to make it shine. If you're just turning up for a pay packet, you'll never get the same result as someone who's passionate about it. And I think everyone everyone who's involved with Bond, producers, everyone, costumes, we're all super passionate about it.
There's a lot of evidence of that. When one of the things that Chris, I remember, said was that he still got giddy when he went on a set. He still had that same rush. And
I do now. I'm too old now, but I still get excited every time. And even I can remember when I first went to the premiere for Casino Royale, and obviously the film starts. You do the film, and we don't hear the Bond music to the last scene, basically. And when it come on, literally the hairs on the back of my neck, sort of, not that I've got a lot, but the hairs on the back like literally stood up. It sort of sends a cold shiver through your spine. It truly is an amazing experience. So.
It is. I have to ask you about James Bond today.
Yeah.
Obviously we've heard about the announcement of Amazon and creative control. And what were your thoughts when you heard about that?
Honestly, I was shocked that the handover happened. I didn't think it would ever happen. But my initial thoughts was, I hope it's being done for business reasons, not medical reasons. Because even though I know Barbara and Michael very well, I don't sort of have phone conversations with them. So I just my concern is, are they healthy? And if they are, then, whatever their decision is, that's up to them. And, if they're going to go off and do other things, I hope they enjoy themselves, because they've definitely earned that sort of privilege. As for the new Bond, oh my God, that's going to be, again, I'm sure there's 1,000, 1 million actors wanting to do the role, but also the responsibility. I think even more now on this one, and obviously now it's not truly Bond, if I can say that, because Barbara and Mark won't be there. I don't know if it'll ever be the same again. I know they're going to be technically involved, but not like that. So obviously Amazon have taken, and and I've spoke to many people in the Bond circle, and our only hope is they don't fuck it up.
That's it. Yeah,
Because it has a formula, it has its fan base and all that, and it's a big. This one's going to be dissected probably more than any Bond film in previous years.
I agree. I think that a lot of people, certainly it was shock, no matter which side of the line you stood on, whether you're excited or not excited, it was still shock all over. And then the feeling of hope and what you want it to be. Like, you don't want it to become an experiment for
No.
Amazon. You want it to still retain a lot of not just what the output and deliverable is, but even the making of Bond has a certain royalty and magicalness
No,
to it.
it is. There's very few franchises that sort of come with the backstory. Like, realistically, it's probably Bond and Star Wars are really two of the original franchises. Even though there's many more now, I don't think any of them are going to be around in 60 years. Still sort of doing stuff. And, again, whoever takes it on, it's going to be a big pair of shoes they've got to fill.
Very big. And well, the whole idea of never say never, would you go back to Bond?
I definitely would, because it's Bond per se, and I'd love to sort of, if I was offered it, I'll certainly look at it. Do you know what I mean? Because we obviously, say we, or like myself, I've obviously done pretty good with it in the past. So to carry it on would be lovely, I suppose.
Well, this is first of all, I'm very happy to hear that, because we would all love you to be a part of it. We're huge fans, but I'm going to throw in a little bonus at the end here, because as I was doing research for this conversation, of course, IMDb, says that you are going to be working on a Star Wars film, but also Thomas Crown Affair in 2027.
I'm literally doing Thomas Crown right now. We're prepping it right now.
And is that with Brosnan again?
No, it's Michael B. Jordan.
Ah, okay. Got it. So it's like a remake.
Yeah, he's actually starring and directing it.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. And then the Star Wars, was that going to be the
Star Wars one? The Star Wars one is around. It got pushed just for script reasons, but they're still working on that, so that will appear somewhere. So,
well, Gary, that just means that we're going to keep our eye on you. That's all that means. I mean, whether it's Bond and Beyond or Star Wars or Thomas Crown, we really appreciate everything that you do and what you continue to do. So thank you so much for being on today.
I actually come along. It was about 2 years ago when you was in London doing the musical thing over the O2.
Yes.
Yeah, I come along because we was literally filming Cleaner 5 minutes down the road on the night shoot. So I managed to get there before we was doing the night shoot, watched your show, and then went over to the night shoot with Martin.
You've got to be kidding. Are you coming this year?
If I can, I definitely will.
But Naomi's going to be there, so you can have a bit of a reunion.
Yeah, perfect. I appreciate. I thought the last one was, again, just the music and the way he was doing it live. Freaking, I just love it. The Bond music, I love it. I play it in the car quite a lot.
That is fantastic to hear. And I didn't even realize you were on my channel until we started going back and forth about.
Yeah, no, I've been following you and again, there was a secret cinema thing a few years ago that I was going to go to, and literally at the last minute, the job I was on changed their schedule, and I couldn't attend, and I was like, oh, freaking gutted. So yeah, no, I've been watching your antics for a few years.
And they are antics. They are.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this. Let me get you that information, but hopefully we can see each other in London and maybe grab a drink and talk more Bond.
Look forward to it.
Gary, thanks for jumping on today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. It's great. Love it.
Take care, my friend. Be good.
Yourself. Cheers. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for watching The Bond Experience. If you like what you saw, why don't you subscribe to the channel by clicking this button right here. We'll keep you up on everything new that's happening in the world of Bond. And speaking of something new, here's something new just for you, because we know you so well. Talk to you soon.